Austin Davis here with TrustMyMechanic.com. Getting a lot of questions over the past week about struts and shocks and when should you replace them. So I had a really good email the other day where a repair shop told a customer, a potential customer, that wanted new tires on her car, that if she didn't replace the struts and the shocks, that it would wear the new tires out. So let's just talk about that. For one, let's just talk about struts and shocks. It's basically the same thing. Here on this truck, most trucks are going to have a shock on the rear. So this thing I'm pointing at, the end of this, is the top of this shock. And it bolts basically to the rear end, which you can't see, which is bolted to the tire. So that's layman terms. That's a shock. A strut is usually at the front of the vehicle on a truck. On a car, you might have shocks or struts. See this spring right there? That coil spring's what it's called. Inside of that, in the middle of that, is the strut or the shock. Now, both items are basically the same thing. They're there for comfort and ride. So as the car travels over a bump, a pothole, let's say, the tire will fall down into the pothole just briefly, and then hits the other side of the pothole and has to come back up. Well, that shock and strut absorb that impact from the tire and the wheel falling down in the hole or going over a bump. So they're basically the same thing. There's some differences, but they act the same. They're there for ride and ride comfort and control. So some people want to say, well, bounce on the front of your car, and if it doesn't bounce for very long after you stop, then your shocks and struts are okay. If it continues to bounce, what we call it rebounce, then you need to replace them. Well, let's go back to that lady with the shocks and struts. Now this car, she said, had 65,000 miles. It was a little Honda Accord. And she wanted new tires, but they didn't want to put the tires on because they said, your struts and shocks are worn and that's going to wear out the tires. Well, let's just think about it for a minute. There's 3,000 pounds of metal sitting on the frame or the unibody if you don't have a frame like a Honda. It's sitting on these tires. So they got all this weight pushing that tire down. The theory is that if you have a worn strut or worn shock, then it'll let the tire bounce up and down, and when it bounces up and down, it kind of skips along the road and causes the tire tread to wear unevenly. That can happen. Extremely, extremely rare. I've probably seen 2 in 25 years that have really had that happen. You have so much weight pushing down on the tire itself, it's going to keep in contact with the road surface. Now, when you have worn struts and shocks, you will notice a little bounciness in the vehicle and maybe a little more of a sway when you turn sharply to the left or try to avoid something. The body of the car wants to roll. And that is because the shock and the strut's just a little weak. It's trying to hold on to the body of the vehicle and keep it in contact with the road. And it's doing this and bouncing in like this. So you get these weird feelings in the car. So shocks and struts will not wear out the tire. Now, if a strut is bent, if you were in an accident, somebody hit this side of the car or this side of the car, the strut can bend, and that way, if it's bent, the alignment of the vehicle is out of alignment. Then you will get a wear pattern on the tire, usually on one side, the outer tread or the inner tread, not all of the tread. So if your tires are worn evenly now, and there's not any weird marks on your tires, there's nothing wrong with the shocks or the struts. Now I am going to show you how you can test yourself, just in a simple road test, if your shocks and struts are worn. So let's get in the vehicle and go do that. Okay, so here we are. We're in the car and my trusty 10-year-old daughter is filming for me. There's a car. There's never a car on my street. Make sure you're in a vacant parking lot when you do this, or a straight road and nobody's on it and the road's dry, not wet. So I'm going to bring the speed up to about 30 miles an hour and we're going to test the rebounce of the shocks and the struts. So I'm taking my brake and I'm pulsating and pushed it down, pushed it down, pushed it down, pushed it down. Now one violent. Ugh. Okay, look at the hood. The hood bounced just for a second and then stopped. Same with the rear of the car. You want to look back behind you and look at your trunk. Is the trunk still bouncing for a second or two after you've made a complete stop? Is the front hood still bouncing a second or two after you made a complete stop, after you've pulsated the brakes? If they are, then your struts or shocks probably are worn. If the hood's still bouncing, your front struts are worn out. If the rear's still bouncing, the rear shocks are probably worn out. So the next test you can do, I'm going to get back up to about 30 miles an hour, and we're just going to sway the truck from left, right, straight. It immediately came back. So the whole body of the vehicle was rolling from left to right, pretty violently at 30 miles an hour. And when I centered the truck back straight again, it immediately recovered. There was no additional sway. If the shocks and struts are worn, you'll get a movement like you're on a boat. 1 or 2 more sways after you've pointed the vehicle straight. If that happens, you probably do need shocks and struts. But if the vehicle passes those 2 tests and you're not experiencing any weird noises, any bumpiness when you go over a bump, it's not excessively bumpy, the struts and the shocks are probably fine. They can last 150,000 miles without really causing any problems either. So when somebody tries to sell you shocks and struts, try the test, look at your tires, make sure your tires are worn fairly evenly, and then you decide if you want to spend $1,200 or so to do it. Thanks a lot. Subscribe to my channel, like the video, share it with your friends. I'll post more. Thanks again. TrustMyMechanic.com.